In the previous video, we talked about a common challenge. Governance is well defined, but it's not consistently driving trusted decisions. In this video, I'll show you what it looks like to make governance operational in practice. Before jumping into the application, let me quickly show how this works at a system level. At the center is the orchestration layer, where governance definitions, data monitoring, and actions come together. The key idea here is the closed loop: detect, resolve, and continuously revalidate. Let me quickly set up the scenario for the demo. We are looking at a typical banking scenario, a risk report, specifically exposure at default, built from multiple data sources, trades, credit risk, and counterparty data, brought together in a warehouse and surfaced in a BI report. On top of that, governance is already defined: critical data elements, business rules, and policies. But the key question is, what happens when something breaks? This is where we operationalize it. Rules run automatically, issues are detected, tickets are created, and the impact is reflected directly in downstream reports. And at the same time, everything, definitions, controls, and actions, is captured as audit-ready evidence. So what I'll show you is the full loop, from identifying a data issue in a report to tracing it back to automatically driving resolution. Here I'm inside the DvSum application. What I'm going to show is a complete closed loop from defining governance to detecting an issue to automatically driving resolution and updating trust. Here I'm logged in as a data steward called Sarah. Let's start with a business view of a risk report. This is the report that a risk analyst sees. But the real question is, can we trust these numbers? Let's trace where this data is coming from. So multiple systems are combined in order to generate the data that moves from the source systems to a data warehouse, eventually to the report. We're going to focus on exposure at default, which gets transformed, aggregated, and eventually is used in the counterparty risk report. Let's go and update our policy. So instead of policy being just a documentation of what should happen, in DvSum, you can make it actionable. I want to auto-generate tickets. I want to propagate DQ failure downstream. Auto recovery, enable auto recovery after one successful run, and clear report labels when data is correctly validated. Let's take one example of a CD called exposure at default. We define a simple rule: value should not exceed $50 million. As soon as I save this, DvSum automatically translates this based on our policy into executable data quality rules across all linked systems. Let's look at those rules that were created. The two rules got created. One is validating the data, as well as reconciliation between the source data and the downstream data warehouse. These run automatically However, let's trigger them now. Let's look at the results. We see an issue on the source data. Not only does it identify what the issues are, but an action has already been created, a ticket has been created, and the exception records are attached to the ticket. Let's look at the CDE data elements. The source data where we identified the exception has been marked with a failure condition based on the policy. More importantly, downstream data elements that are driven from this particular source data has been marked as untrusted. The report that the risk analyst is going to see, the untrusted flag has been, or badge has been propagated downstream to the report. So the issue is not hidden in the data. It is surfaced when decisions are made. Now let's say that the issue is fixed. The system will automatically validate the data next time. So in this case, on a daily basis. For now, let's go ahead and run it manually. Now the issues are resolved. All the data looks healthy. More importantly, this information is propagated downstream. The DQ failure no longer shows up on the specific trade exposure column. It has been propagated downstream where the downstream data doesn't show as untrusted. And the next day, when the risk analyst opens the report doesn't talk about any data quality issues. So what we just saw is define once, detect continuously, resolve automatically, and propagate trust to the business outputs. Now let's look at audit. Instead of gathering data evidence manually, we can simply ask the DvSum AI agent to generate an audit report. It pulls together rules, policies, lineage, and actions into audit-ready evidence. What you just saw is the shift. Governance is no longer something defined and checked after the fact. It becomes part of how data operates. At the high level, three things are happening here. First, data is continuously validated, not just at reporting time. Second, issues don't just get detected, they're routed, resolved, and tracked in a closed loop. And third, everything is fully traceable. So you always have audit-ready evidence. So governance moves from being a control layer to becoming an operating system. And typically this starts with one focused use case where governance already exists but isn't operational today.